But I think that is the big thing right now, is the science lab.
Now, is this room the best place to put it?
It's one of the biggest rooms, it also is air conditioned.
Right.
So, the bigger room, there's only one room bigger, and that is the social studies room across, in Mrs. Abney's room. It's just a little bit bigger, but, it's not much bigger, and it's not air conditioned, and I think this will probably be a good place for, because we'll have the vetting and so forth, So those are the big things. Space study, that's second. The first is definitely the science lab, and that's an immediate need. And if we, all of a sudden, somebody hit Powerball, and we ended up getting a lot of money to refurbish the inside of the building, a lot of this same equipment can be used in the newer wing or whatever. And that's a newer wing, so they didn't even touch that. But if they did reconfigure that area a bit, these things, these workstations, and fume hood and so forth can be used. It might just have to be, reconfigured.
Do we have any idea what a space study would cost?
We had
10 to 15.
Yeah, that's what we had before, a couple years ago, we had it at 10,000. So I think anywhere from 10 to 15,000.
And NASDAQ will come in and do that, so will the New Hampshire School Administrators Association. They have set fees for that, I could look into that.
And Scott had, he's not here. You recommended an architect when we talked to, I think it was one of the original architects of the
Addition.
addition. I think that's who it was.
Imagine, with all the emphasis on STEM, you would think there'd be grants available, so we could pursue for this. Because, STEM's a big thing.
Right.
And there's gotta be grants out there that we could pursue to help.
We need a group of
help
people
fund
who
this
can
thing.
do the research and spend the time doing that.
Yeah.
And then bring the money in outside of the district if we can't bring money in, so,
Well, yeah.
if we have a nonprofit.
Yeah, get a nonprofit, they can do the grants and for the nonprofit and then distribute the money to school, but then you have to set who the trustees are and all that other
Yes,
stuff.
you do. Yep, you have
So,
to have a board and they have to meet.
yes, they have to meet and their decisions may not be the same
That's
as
true.
school boards.
That's
They
true.
may have different priorities. So, but it's certainly something to consider.
Mhm.
You have to be able to take the revenue first.
Yes, we have to be able to take the revenue, which is the other issue with the warrant articles.
Well, if the committee was their own nonprofit, they could accept the revenue
But
and.
can they give it to us?
and- No, they could pay for it.
Oh,
They
they
would
could pay-
pay
all
for
right.
the things to be
You're
done
right.
at school.
All right, so we'll do, yeah,
Yeah, you wouldn't be done for the school conference, it should be done for
all right.
the other organization.
The only other
Well,
thing
name it
was,
after them.
I did have one other, as I see that it's in here, Mr. Herman had given me two bids. One was for a classroom set of science textbooks for $5,200, which that is included in the budget. But he had also got an estimate so that every child would have a textbook. And that was at $23,000, so that is there for your consideration.
So the new book's already in the budget?
The new books are in the budget for a classroom set, I believe it's 30
What grade
textbooks.
is
For,
that?
it would be for 7th and 8th.
7th and 8th grade.
And then he also got a bid for 150 textbooks for 7th and 8th.
How much was that?
That was 23,000. That's in your packet. 24,000.
Packet?
So this would be more, so that would be in addition to what's already in the budget, John?
There's 5,000 in the budget.
There's
Oh,
5,000.
there's only 5,000.
Yeah,
So it'll be
that's for
18,000.
classroom more than-
Right,
That's
a
correct.
classroom
That would be
set
more.
that doesn't go home and stays there.
Right.
And we might even be able to reduce that.
Now, is there a way, some textbooks now come with internet access. So kids with computers could access the textbooks and work sessions from home with a password and a username. Is that what we're looking at when we're purchasing textbooks? 'Cause that would alleviate the need to get,
Two sets.
2 sets.
If they all
I
have
don't know,
internet access.
I'm not sure
which
about
is-
it, I'd have to.
Yeah, it would depend on
The
the
schools-
Each student would
Yeah.
get an ID though.
Yeah,
So you'd still have to have the book.
You usually pay a fee for
Right.
that internet
Right.
access, and that's not included in there.
I don't see that.
Well, actually,
It's a license fee.
that history book that I reviewed actually had that.
Yeah, and there's usually an additional fee for it
Right.
on top of the book.
Right.
And my concern is that the research is coming out now. If you read Scientific American Mind, in fact, this month they have an article. There have been a number of studies since 2001 showing that students do not retain the information from a screen as well as they do from a book. It's been repeated, it's not considered conclusive at this time because they're still improving screens, but at this time, students don't retain quite as much as they do when they actually have a book in their hand. So I've been watching this to see, the e-readers are a little better than just screens, but students don't retain that knowledge. They don't have the markers that you have in a book. When you hold a book and you have things in the book that you can see, your mind doesn't retain it. So I'm watching that to see, to look at technology and see where's the best direction to go.
And like I said, it's third on the priority list. If we've got the science lab in there, then we definitely would put this off. I just wanted to present it because Mr. Herman did a lot of work in getting this book to, and I wanted to recognize the work that he's done to get this to us, this information.
So science lab first, space study second, and then the book.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, I really, I think we really need to address a warrant article so we can have a grant committee sit down and help bring some money to school. I mean, the money's out there, I get the emails every month. There's money there. I know, like I said, they like the bigger schools first, but there's some are targeted
There are some,
rural.
well, it's like the one we saw for the STEM, the $2
Right.
million grant.
Right,
That was a project oriented, but when you see a grant like that, what you do is you have a project that requires a science lab.
right,
And, you look for something that can do that.
right.
There was one that you had sent me about a foreign language teacher for Chinese,
Yes, you can get
Right.
Chinese.
but we had to have a Chinese teacher in place. Some of those programs, what they would do is they would send someone over from China to
Right.
enhance your program. So a lot of them are like they enhance your programs or supplement.
Well,
Right.
China will pay the salary, but you have to provide room and board and transportation to the person.
Yeah, I'm not.
That's the way the contracts are working now.
I think Chinese is a good language.
But we had to have a
It's a
Chinese
5-year
program.
language. If you're not gonna do 5 years of it, it's not permanent.
It's not the best language
Yeah. Foreign language is,
foreign language to out
it's a 5-year language.
When you say you need a nonprofit to do grant writing, is something like the Fremont PTA a nonprofit that could do grant writing and do exactly what you're saying?
Yes.
Take in the money
Yep,
and then spend it on a science lab?
yes, they could,
Okay.
because they are their own private entity, separate from the school system, and they can
No?
take in and expend money.
Why do you say no?
We're not allowed to do anything that does capital gains.
Oh, really?
We can't fund anything with the building that has a capital gains
That's a
to
part
it.
of the PTA.
Yeah,
National.
it is part of our 501(c)(3)
Okay.
rules that we have to adhere by.
Well, can't you change that?
I know.
We can't make
Yeah.
capital improvements to the school.
Nope, we can't decide, nothing that
That makes
basically
sense.
sticks that's a
Otherwise,
fixture.
yeah, you'd
Yeah.
be pressured into doing that a
Yeah.
lot, which is not
We have to
the-
keep it entirely separate.
Yeah.
But if we didn't have that warrant article, we wouldn't need it.
Yes, that's right, you've gotta get rid of that warrant article.
If we didn't have a warrant article, we wouldn't need it.
Well, you need the right warrant article passed that allows you to accept unanticipated funds.
Right.
That's all. That's gotta be, we've got to lobby for that and make that happen. And people have to trust that we're not going to bind them to things that will require future expense, particularly positions, I know it seems to be the sensitive area. But if you do set up a foundation, which
Right.
is what Messina did, they set up an educational foundation, separate and distinct from the school, specifically for the purpose of raising funds and writing grants to enhance learning in the school district. And like I said, they were given, to kick off, they were given 25 grand. But you set that up specifically to do that, and then you can spend the funds appropriately. But it's work, and it does require a board, and it does have to do annual reports
Yes,
and
it
follow all the rules.
All the IRS stuff.
It's not
and everything like that.
little work,
No, it's not.
but it can be done. I think that's it on budget for FY15.
Okay, I think you guys, you know, I would, when you take the budget home and look at it, look at John's wish list too and see what you think would be important or not to add to the budget, if you think that would work and it would pass, and bring back your ideas.
There's one question about the science lab. This doesn't have to all be done at once. It looks like some of this could be done in stages.
Not really.
Not really?
No, I mean, I think it's really just mostly furnishings, you know, they would have a perimeter lab workstations, I mean, that's,
You have to have places to store your chemicals
Yeah.
and your materials that is lockable. You have to have the hood to be able to use the Bunsen burners. You have to have the tables to use the Bunsen burners, so it really kind of goes, it's kind of like the
Yeah.
bucket and the straw. It all goes together.
I mean, the plumbing,
Yes, exactly.
the plumbing costs, is that for the Bunsen burners?
and the sinks,
Yeah.
there's sinks built into these,
Stations.
workstations.
Yeah, and although, if Scott were here, and I've talked to Scott a little bit about that, he tends to find ways to absorb those kinds of things into his budget. So I wouldn't worry so much about the plumbing and electrical as much as the units themselves, the placement of the units, and it's the big expense.
And the science books that we have in the budget is just enough for them to have in the classroom, is that
Yeah,
what?
the classroom.
Classroom set for 7 and 8.
Any other questions before we move on?
Okay for now.
Okay, I guess we're all set, Sarah, JR, John, if you want to say you're welcome to, but your part of the meeting is, you had so much to say. Thank you very much.
For once, I'm not.
Thank you.
The budget transfer requests. Let's do that, so Susan got home.
Yes. Drive carefully, please.
Yeah, but I have to pass out for you guys.
I gave one to everyone.
Oh, you did, okay. Okay.
That's fine.
Oh, good.
Backup is not. Too much paper. We've been burning a lot of.
Bye, have a great night.
There's 2 pages of them, so you know. One is just kind of regular general fund stuff to keep us going. And the second page is transferring some of those grants out of the general fund and into the 22 fund.
See ya.
And Andy, that first one is
Right.
to help solve your dilemma of the propane.
You're right.
Yeah. It looks like that position, I mean, that function has a full-time person and a part-time person, and it looks like it's the part-time person sharing the extra time, and so I think maybe the budget, it's easy to do when you're doing a budget, and I think that's what probably happened, because it's exactly her salary times 14.16%.
It just happens to be,
I found.
she's busy this afternoon. And again, normally we would try to have transfers due in advance, but it's.
It's been a very
It's been a
crazy,
week.
it's all right,
Yeah.
very crazy
Yeah.
3 weeks.
Have we already paid for all the oil this year?
We haven't paid for it all, but
It's encumbered.
it's encumbered.
And you'll be happy to know, Andy, that the propane and electrical are in the same line.
Right, that's,
Yeah, that's right, you said that.
right.
And my head was elsewhere, my apologies.
Yeah. That was-
I get it.
We were happy to find that out.
Yeah. Yeah, I was analyzing it last Friday and I was like,
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So can I ask you a question? The supplies that you're transferring into, are these the supplies that John wanted at the beginning of the year?
Yes, those are the supplies that he was looking
The
for.
science.
There are some
There are
science
some
supplies,
science.
there's a variety of different supplies that apparently were not coming in and people needed.
A lot of the elementary grades.
Yeah, so he brought those up and we looked for them.
Awesome.
This is what was from the last meeting.
Yeah, it's about $7,500, I think.
So we had a surplus in the fuel oil line?
Right now, yeah, it looks that way. They budgeted, what looks like the usage from last year.
Right.
Last year, I think you only used 15,300 gallons. So if you multiply that times your current rate that you got,
Now you see that there's gonna be a conference, the state's sponsoring a concert, a conference or a suggestion thing on developing wood pellet.
And we should look into that.
I mean, there
We
is
did that in the
something.
scenic, we
Yeah.
went to pellets with the high school and the elementary, and we were in the process of converting the middle school. Then the SAU was pellet burning,
Yeah,
and it saved a remarkable amount of money, and we did it mostly through grants.
right.
We were able to make the changes almost completely through
Right.
grants.
Yeah, the state's having
Yep.
they're having a get-together
Yep.
to discuss.
And I can send Scott up to that.
Proposals. Yeah,
No, we should be able to get that going and make that.
yeah, last year you used 15,734 gallons. So even if you budget for 15,750 gallons, at this year's rate, you'd only be paying just shy of 53,000.
right, that's why, I asked, a while back to try and get one of those heating days, what's that called? Remember I asked Scott, and I can't remember what they are. I can't remember. But anyway, it's, what you do is you look at the average, you can predict based on average winter temperatures,
Oh,
Yeah, you-
okay.
what your
Yeah.
usage is.
Average daily temperature,
Out
yeah.
near the temperature, and that way you can predict what your usage is gonna be.
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier, because, it varies from year to year. And so you can really look at, on average, how
It's
many.
been like, well,
what
he was
the-
sharing with us that
yeah.
he kind of plays tricks with the,
Right,
the heat, so.
right.
Yeah,
gets
he's very frugal.
Yeah, he gets the most out of it.
He does.
Is that something we put on another agenda for another time to talk about as a board, or
Looking at the pellet, absolutely.
whatever Andy's
Yeah.
talking about here? Because this is-
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
So-
So there's going to need to be some work
Well,
done to research.
I think not just pulp, but I think we should be taking a look at all alternatives.
And I would say that the work that was done in Messinic basically did, and so we ended up with pellets, and we had the system paid for.
Right.
And the gentleman who did it, the head building in grounds, Barry Sommerall, is again a remarkable, like Scott, remarkably frugal and knows what he's
Right.
doing. And
Right.
he's a great resource in this. We would be able to give him a call and he could tell us how.
Well, there's also the energy committee in town, which
And they-
I'm wondering if they aren't already doing something, so,
That's a good point.
Yeah, because we get our oil.
but I'm just trying to stick to the budget transfers right now, so what I'm trying to do is redirect that topic to, Cheryl Rowell could tell us about it.
You should get together with the energy committee.
I was gonna say.
Because we had that energy audit done, and there were suggestions at the end of that, and I think y'all have.
I think a lot of time went into that, so, all right, why don't we do this, put that on, we will put the energy committee,
For future
report,
training.
what we were given as the audit, I think we were given something in writing that we should
And
have.
it may be on the town website already.
Okay.
Okay, I'll pull that out.
Okay.
Yeah, so
And then we
you
can
guys have
review
the
that
audit.
and take some steps that way, because I don't think we have to reinvent the wheel.
No,
No, and
There's
if you
been a
can
lot
get the
of stuff
support of
done.
the energy committee and combine with them and have them, share meeting time and discuss.
Right.
it.
yeah, Scott's been following your suggestions.
So we'll look into that either for the next meeting or the meeting after, because I know there's a lot going on right now, so.
All right,
But
I'd like
that's,
to motion to accept the budget transfers for 15,423.92, as well as the transfers for the grants for $75,464 as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Go get some sleep.
Wired.
Okay.
I didn't even have to kick you under the table.
I know, so that was motion made, second to pass, 5-0. You got that right, Sue? Alright, so now we'll go right to the approval of minutes, public minutes of October 8th, 2013.
I have only one thing on it, page 5.
There were some red lines on here, was that already from,
Yeah, I saw those too.
were the red lines from you, Betsy? Or were they from?
Actually, so weren't they from you?
I'm sorry.
We're looking at the minutes from October 8th. The red lines that were in the minutes, did they came from you or did
No.
I do them?
No, I didn't do
I
it.
don't remember.
Wasn't this meeting at the school?
Yes, it was.
It says it was here.
Yes,
Sorry.
good
But
point.
that's okay.
I can't imagine,
I
I
didn't
didn't
even
be
catch
confused
that.
after we moved meetings around.
I know, really.
Sorry.
I didn't print this one.
No, I didn't make those. I don't know
Okay.
who's gonna
That's okay, there's some red lines, so as long as everybody's okay with them,
phone. Okay, I can do that.
they're in here, so it's not.
Yeah, the only other thing I had left was the question mark on page 5, at the bottom of the page, on the large paragraph under alternative learning program, you have a question mark. And I wasn't sure what the question mark was for. Was it for what ALP means?
At the bottom?
In the
Due to
big
budget?
paragraph that starts with Ms. Penny contacted up in the.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, what does ALP mean?
Yeah, alternative learning program, right? If I'm,
Yep,
anybody know? Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, so it is alternative learning program, so you
Okay.
take out the question mark. I wasn't sure if it was program or
I
plan.
thought it was clean.
Yeah.
Page 3.
We'll-
It says idea, I can never take it off. Wondered why the public not asked. I think it should say why not asked. Yes, no. Page 3. That first line,
Yeah.
second bottom paragraph.
Oh, was not asked.
Yeah.
Yep, thank you.
I thought we should attach them, I don't know what page it is in the packet, but, it's the first page of the minutes, section 4, old business. It says Mr. Sakina included in his report for tonight information regarding the 80% drop in disciplinary notices. I just thought we should attach that report to these minutes so people can follow it.
Good idea.
And under public input, section 9. It's the end of the second paragraph, which goes to the following page. I think it should say, the first line, Ms. Keenup replied that the district did not charge nonprofit organizations that use the facility.
Okay.
And then the very next line, it said, but she said the policy allows the board to waive this.
Okay.
Two under adjournment. I don't think we adjourned at 9:20 because we didn't come back to general session until 10:25 and we were here
Right.
until
Yep.
10:45, I believe,
Yep.
so.
I might have just carried that over from last time. Okay, thanks.
Under section 10, information items, number 6, way at the bottom of the page, the very last sentence says, Ms. Keen wondered about people's Per section, not
Oh.
conception.
Sorry.
That wasn't me.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I know.
You're blushing. And then I think, let's see. That same section, yes. Section C, budget guidance from board to interim superintendent, and then there's like a section that says recess 8:20 to 8:30 PM, right below that.
Yep.
The third line down, I think, the first left word should be rate and not base. It was about you, Andy.
Oh, what's this?
He felt that they could increase the budget without increasing the tax rate, I think is what you meant,
Right.
not tax base.
Yeah, tax rate.
Okay. Oh, and boy, we messed up a little bit with the NEASC accreditation, section F. We're probably gonna have to revisit that at some point because, at the end, it looks like we never really did vote on anything.
Yeah, but the motion that I made
Never.
never got seconded.
Never got second.
So we just left everything where
We
it
just
is, which
left
is
it,
fine.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Needs to be
Yeah.
done.
Okay.
In the end, we decided that we weren't gonna move it, it was gonna stay
Right.
where it was,
Okay.
so it's
Exactly.
fine, there didn't need to be a vote.
Okay, so then we're okay. All right.
Good night.
Good night.
Stay safe, thanks.
Night. Thank you, Sue.
Yes.
That's all I have. Does anybody else have anything else? Did the public have anything? Because it was. So do I have a motion to accept as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And the non-public were sealed for a year, so I think we better put those,
Yeah,
The
that should
non-public
have
for
been in the
tonight?
packet.
um,
Yeah, the process, issue we just need to straighten out.
that's it. And then any correspondence?
Yeah, so there's correspondence in the packet, there were 4 items.
Legal notice of the
Yeah.
Hoffman Way, or Colonial Hoffman.
Right, yeah, there was legal notice right from the zoning board. If there's any comment or questions on that. And then the,
Tonight.
So what, we have to decide whether we want, we were invited to the public hearing. so we have to
It's
decide-
tonight.
it's tonight.
It's tonight, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Has Scott got any information from anybody
He
about
hasn't
it?
heard anything, no, he hasn't mentioned anything, so, this have to be sent to all of others, and,
Right. Yeah, okay. I don't have a problem with it.
you know. If everybody's happy with that, then the next thing is the approval from the commissioner of Ellis School, status is approved.
Yeah. Nice.
And then from SAU83 was an invitation to meet with your legislators. So if you would like to go meet with your legislators on Monday, October 28th at 7 PM to 8:30, and he promises it'll be over at 8:30. You can give your opinions about things to them.
Is this, they inviting our legislators from our district's gonna be there, or
Yes,
just
that's
theirs?
the idea. Well,
How did they ever invite our 3? We have 2, Tim Comerford and Dan Itzy.
I think you would have to talk to Mike Morgan and ask if they're
Yeah.
coming. I think he puts out a general for the whole area.
All right.
But I'm not sure who specifically, that's so cute, who specifically is.
Sorry, we're all looking.
I mean, we,
We want to take turns.
Just recess for a few minutes.
Pass the media around.
You want a cookie?
And the last one is the letter from the commissioner granting us the exception under chapter 3211 to use the $40,000.
Yes.
And I had notified the DOE of that, and one of the reps out of DevCon with Joey Nickel is coming down Thursday to meet with John, who just sort of learned about that to get the ball rolling on the focus schools, because they haven't provided us any services because they haven't been able to. So now we will be able to find out what we're supposed to do to get the ball rolling, so.
Is that gonna be for next year too, that revenue?
I believe
If it
that's
is.
this year only, and then there would be additional next year.
So we should probably make sure we budget that.
That's, I will find out.
Okay.
I will find out. I don't wanna budget anything we're not gonna get. But I also, just as a quick add-on to that, this was sent around today from the DOE. It's a frequently asked questions about priority in Title I focus schools. And it does a great job of explaining some of the questions that you might have. It's, and for the public as well. I may use some of the things in newsletter and pass the extras out to everybody as well. But it does go over how the identification happens and what happens now and what are the requirements and what these people who are gonna be involved, how the process works. So it'll give you a better idea. Yeah, I thought that would be helpful. Yes.
And that was it, right?
Yep.
Subcommittee reports, policy committee. Well, we met tonight over at the school and we went over a few policies. We have plans to pretty much purge some of the policies that are in the policy book that are no longer even supposed to be there under law because they just haven't been purged. Those will all come before the board with the reasons why, and then we'll be starting in on any, I think there's 4 that are
Actually,
required by law now.
It's more than that,
Okay.
and I don't have my policy book with me. There's about 7 or 8 of them.
Okay, that we have to take care of relatively
Right away.
quickly, so that'll be our next policy meeting. And we did, we'll bring some first readings to you for the facilities use that we did tonight.
And we have to pick up other prior readings that haven't come.
That's right, which are in our June 11th meeting.
I'll
If
have
we
to
go to
look-
that,
yeah,
we'll be
I'll go
good.
there and pull those out.
Yeah. And so we're back on schedule now.
Good job.
Budget committee? What do you think, Greg?
Alright,
Oh, the golden question.
so budget committee is down to 5 people. So that's because of 2 people left, 1 person switched roles. So essentially 1 person doesn't show up, we don't have a quorum. So it brings me to next week, is Halloween. I'm gonna tell them I can't do next week if anyone is willing to cover, otherwise
I'll
I'll
be
have
out
to
of
cancel.
town.
I would love to cover, except I can't. I'm on the
doing
agenda.
trick or treats?
It's my budget.
Well, so,
I can't cover.
no, that's fine,
everybody's.
it may not happen then, because without 1 person, so, that's all.
Yeah, you need a
But it's going, Mike Nygren asked some questions a while back that you did reply back in September. I thought they're forwarded over to that meeting I missed, so there's miscommunication, I forwarded it to him. He had some question about that, the data you gave. He's looking for proposed numbers from last year, what the proposed staffing was. He told me tonight. I'll look at it and ask you whatever I missed. Besides that, things are going.
So can anybody fill in for Greg Wednesday?
I don't have my phone, I don't know, I think I'm gonna have something scheduled.
Oh, that's right.
It's
you'll be
trick or treating,
Yeah.
May
All
I,
right.
I'll get back to you.
Yeah, let me know.
I'll get my phone, I'll let you know.
It'll matter for Heidi because she'll know
Yeah.
whether to cancel the meeting or
Yeah,
not
so I mean,
ahead
you
of
can
time.
you can get back to me by tomorrow night.
Oh,
I
yeah.
still have no tomorrow
I'm
night.
on the agenda tomorrow.
Okay.
I can't sit in.
Tomorrow night you do.
Tomorrow night I'm fine, it's next week is
week.
Halloween.
Yeah.
Next week I'm out of town.
No, that's fine.
Grab a budget,
I know,
no,
my
it's
kids are
illegal.
there.
Okay, so you're gonna you'll check your schedule? you
Yeah.
think? Okay,
So,
all right. Just get back to Heidi. Okay. Negotiations committee. Oh, that would be me.
We're still going strong.
Yeah, we're still going strong.
Tomorrow you have a.
We have an all-day negotiating meeting tomorrow, so we'll
nice.
see what happens. And support staff?
Or we received a proposal from the support staff and we sent them our proposal. And our first
Our
meeting
next meeting is next week.
next week, right? Monday?
I think it's
Yes, Monday, yeah.
yes.
Monday.
Okay.
Is that one, the one at one or one at three? I'm not like, phone with me, so I have no idea.
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Anyway.
Nobody can, it's not public.
Yeah.
Board of Selectmen's Committee. That'd be you, Andy.
Yeah, I mean, no, I haven't met with them. It's budget season, it's a tough time to get in there.
Mhm. PTA liaison?
Haven't had another meeting yet, from the last time.
Yep. Professional development liaison. We don't have that. I
Do
think
you
we
want
have
to
to
just
change
take that out of
that.
the agenda from now on?
I think so. There is another one, but we can look at it, Betsy, I'll show you what I'm talking
Okay.
about in the color starting.
Okay.
Curriculum committee? Who's been, have you done the teacher? Survey?
We'll get the teacher survey, it's been handed out, we should be done, I guess am I calling? I think I'm calling, are you dropping off at my house?
It's going to, a deadline of October 31st
Right.
was put down, a 2-week deadline, and then once we get that in, we can begin collation
Right.
of it. And I'm actually not gonna be available for 2 weeks, so it all depends on when our next curriculum meeting is,
Right,
whether I collate it or work together with a group of people or
Right.
hand it off to Andy.
Okay, so we probably won't see anything from that until the end of November.
I'd say the
Or
second meeting in
beginning of
November.
yeah.
Okay. We'll just, the sooner we can know, we'll put it on the agenda, so,
Right.
because that'll be a presentation. Okay. Public input. I don't even have the.
How was
summary
about
sheet.
the,
Does anybody have any? Sue Levine?
Hi, Sue Levine, 72 Road Drive, Fremont. I did have a couple of items I wanted to bring up. With regard to the current school year, and I appreciate that the board voted last time to provide benefits to the non-union colleagues, so I appreciate that. I did have a question with regard to what the cost was of that versus if they were allowed to get their benefits through the union, which I believe does not have a cost associated with it. So I was just wondering if we were paying for those benefits.
The school district pays for all benefits.
Right, so the
So
cost
there's
is
a, it's the same
it's a
cost.
wash.
Okay, so it doesn't make a difference to us financially.
No.
In regard to the supplies, there was some kind of conversation about that. It sounded like there was money going for supplies, and I just couldn't follow it all because you guys were looking at something, and I just wondered what was just said about the supplies.
The transfers that we made today were for the supplies that were underfunded at the beginning of the year.
Okay, because there was something where John was gonna bring 7,000 in
That's what-
science.
That was tonight. I think we transferred roughly 7,000-ish and change.
Okay.
Thank
We
you.
can show them that. Here you go. This is the transfer sheet that, so that you can have an idea of where the money went tonight.
Sure.
And anybody's welcome to look at that. Normally, we have the stuff on the overhead, and we're gonna
Right.
try to get back to that.
Just
Yeah.
moved tonight, and we weren't quite ready.
Yeah, and we really just need to get back to having it on the wall for you, so that you all can see what we're looking at, and we apologize that it's not there right now.
Thank you. So I'll definitely look at this and then I'll hand it around and we can give it back, but, because I thought there was like 7,000 for science, but then there had been 4,000 that had been cut from the supply budget, so is this covering the science or is this covering the shortfall?
Nothing was cut from supplies from the budget, so we don't know what you were talking about.
Okay.
What happened is when John brought his budget forward last year, the superintendent and he meet together, and she may have reduced his line, but we, the school board, did not cut from the 10,000 that was put into the budget.
Right, and I think what happened was when we had voted at the deliberative session to put the funds back in, that 4,000, so when you compare 13, 14 to the prior year, there was a reduction from the prior year supply line. And when we had voted to put funds back in, I know that there were some unexpected things with the bus contract, and then thank you, Ida, for supplying the breakdown. It looked like a lot of it went into insurance costs, and but none of it. And I understand we didn't fund the intranet and we didn't fund the science lab. That was things that we had voted for at the deliberative session because these other costs, like the bus contract and other things, came up. But we never put that 4,000 back into the supply line. So, I was just wondering, you know, where, the money that was voted at the deliberative session was used to cover a lot of these additional expenses. If we hadn't voted that money back in, I don't know where that money would have come from to pay for these things that seem to be costs that we need to have to run the school, for the bus and for the insurance costs.
It was all covered in the original budget that was proposed by the school board. So that included a reduction in we were not gonna fill the social studies teachers or there are other differences in the original budget.
Well, I have your breakdown here, and I'm not gonna belabor the point, because it sounds like there was some transfers made, and hopefully that, you know, what I just feel is that, from an empowering our staff and administration perspective, that if funds are needed to pay for paper or something like that, I don't think that in September and October in the school year that it's empowering our staff to have to transfer from one line of the budget to another or ask permission for funds to pay for paper. So that's.
Is that what, are they out of paper, is that what you're saying?
Well, that's what was said at the last board meeting after public input. John said, why was this budget transfer $600? Because he had to transfer from professional development to pay for paper because the supply line was negative. And I know that I've already brought this up via email and it's been addressed, but I just wanted to say, you know, even if we say to the school, if you need something, we'll take care of it, don't worry. It's just not an empowering thing. To have that where.
We have a policy in place where the administration has to ask us for transfers. That's our policy.
Right, because the supply line is negative.
Any line they have to come to the board for transfers from one line to another.
Mhm.
If they need extra money in a line above and beyond what they budgeted, our policy is they must come to the school board.
Right, and I
And
think
we're following it with RSA 3210, which says the governing body is the only people who, in the district, who have the right to transfer funds.
right.
That's why we do what we do.
No, and I absolutely understand that. My only point is I think that supply line was underfunded to start the year because it was a reduction from the prior year of $4,000, and that money that we had voted to go back into the line did not go back into the line. It went into other things.
Because when you move from the floor, you're telling us what to add to the bottom line of the budget, but you cannot dictate where it goes. The board has to make that decision. And actually, we look to the superintendent to make that decision, which is what Michelle Langa had done when she made those transfers into those lines. And we approved them based on her recommendation. So that's how things are done. It's not the school board saying no to John for $4,000 worth of supplies. And I want to make that clear because we weren't even aware there was an issue until you all came to a meeting and told us. And so it's not very empowering for the board to be able to actually fund things when we don't know they need to be funded.
Well, and I hope it's not coming across as accusatory, and I certainly don't intend it to be that way. There's no intention of
I think that everybody needs to understand that there is a process in place in order to fund things properly, and the board is not saying no to things and not cutting things as it seems it's being said.
Well, that's, I appreciate that, that input, and I think I'm saying from my perspective as a community member, it's invisible to me who does what, and so my point is not to point fingers or call out blame or do anything negative. My point is to say, I would like to see the supply line funded, and I think I should be able to say that and not be, made to feel that, you know, I'm causing some kind of conflict, because that's not my
We
intent.
would like to see the supply line funded also, and we do approve what people ask us for on the board most of the time. I can't think of a time that we didn't, but we need to know if there's a shortage.
Well, and that's why I'm bringing it up.
And we can't fix it if there's not, if we don't know.
So, and that's why I'm bringing it up, but I'm feeling like it's wrong that I'm bringing it up, so.
I'm trying to make it clear the process. I'm not finding fault with your bringing it forward. What it sounds like, what I'm hearing is that you think we cut the budget by $4,000 or we shorted it by $4,000, and then we weren't gonna give the school what it needed when they asked us what they needed, which is not what happens.
Well, and I don't know what the process is, and I don't know what happened, because I try to come to as many meetings as I can, and perhaps I missed the one where that was discussed. But I am saying.
It was never discussed, Sue, until the public brought it forward. That's what we're trying to say to you, is we didn't know about this shortage until it
But
was
at some
brought
point, there
forward.
had to be a decision made as to additional funds came back into the budget. So there had to be a decision made as to where those funds were distributed, and a decision was made by the board, as is your right, to put that money back into the supplies, which then led to a decrease in the supplies from the prior year.
We
So-
heard from the public that there was a need for supplies instead of hearing from the school administration. And when we heard from the school administration, it went up the chain and it was taken care of. There is a process. So what I'm sensing is that on the school side, people were feeling like they couldn't ask. And but then they finally did ask, it was taken care of. So you're right, there's a culture problem. There is an issue that needs to be addressed, and we recognize that. And that's where I'm hoping that we can work on that, so that we can alleviate that sense of disconnect from how it all works. I see what you're saying, absolutely, and I understand completely what your point is. We're gonna work on that.
Okay.
We are.
I
And thank you
appreciate
for bringing it up.
My other question was with regard to the policy committee, and I was looking at the minutes from June 11th. I saw that there was some change being discussed about the gun policy. I just wanted to know, I don't want to be in the same position I was in with the mission statement, where I didn't realize I was supposed to attend a meeting and look at minutes and know what to say. So I don't know, is there going to be a point for the public to be allowed to comment on it before we change our gun policy?
Oh, yeah, it's weapons policy you're talking about, correct?
What does it say
I was
school?
on
It's
the
the JIC,
agenda.
the
Well, the
JICH.
state school,
Okay. We are in the process of updating all of our policies, but that is one that was updated. The first reading of that policy was on June 11th. And it's basically what the New Hampshire School Board Association recommends the school have. And that's what we did the first reading on June 11th, and the board voted 4-1 to accept the first reading. There's 3 readings. They're always posted on the agenda, so you'll always know when it's coming up. And there's always a public input session prior to us talking about those policies. And the policies are available for you to be able to look at and read ahead of time. So you'll always see those on the agenda before we vote on them or talk about them.
The agenda of this meeting, not the policy.
Oh, right, the regular
So
school
this
board
one, so it
meeting
comes in.
agenda. See, the policy committee meets and reads the policies. 2 people from the board are representatives. Sharon Girardi and I are on the policy committee, I think because nobody else wanted to be. And so, we sit and read the policies, and then we work with the superintendent. We make sure that they're what the law requires us to have, and that the New Hampshire School Board Association's lawyers have looked at. And then we bring it forward to the school board with a recommendation, either to accept it or to reject it. And then the school board votes on it. But before that happens, the public has an opportunity at those meetings to speak up.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And then in regard to the budget for 14-15, there was, I was just wondering why the science lab was not in the budget, like why it was a wish list item as opposed to being in the budget. Are we going to try to make it a warrant article?
I mean, you'd have to ask when they close the budget to as far as approve the budget, I don't know.
Can I ask the
That's the way it's
superintendent?
presented.
Right,
Is that-
we didn't choose to put it in the budget because it's such a large expense item. Sometimes when we were looking at a 3.3% raise in the budget, and the guidance from the board was to try to keep the budget to a level that would be, hold the tax rate relatively close, and looking at the amount of assessment that is increased, which isn't 10, it's about 7. So, we're not looking at a huge amount. We wanted to give that option to the board to discuss, to see whether or not they wanted to, they can choose to put it in the budget, or they can choose to put it in a warrant article.
Or we could choose to use the fund balance from this year to pay for it if there's a fund balance. And which goes back to the point of the money that you put back into the budget when you voted from the floor. we don't know what the fund balance is gonna be. We ended up with a $209,000 fund balance from last year.
Right.
So chances are, there's gonna be money left over at the end of this year. And so you can use it for a bunch of different things.
Okay. But it-
Whatever the board
And the concern
votes
is,
to do that
the
with that.
concern is, if we come forward with a budget that has a substantial increase, there's, in my mind, there's no way the contracts are gonna pass, and that's another goal of ours, is to get the contracts passed.
Well, and that was one of my questions too. I saw that in the SAU office line, there was 40,000, and you mentioned something about that was the raises.
That's a pool of funds, 3.5% for all non-CBA personnel who work in the district. That's often done, the superintendent has discretion to give raises to John, to Sarah, to various people. And that's usually the way it's done.
OT, PT, anybody who's non-union.
Yeah.
And does the union, and I'm sorry, I should probably know this, but I don't know where to go to find out, does the union contract always have to be as a separate warrant article?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, well, I would love to be helpful with whatever I can do to help support that, particularly if we can get some of the things that were in it last year with regard to the extra time to work on the NEASC accreditation, because I think that's really important for the school. And then I wanted to ask about grants in the budget because of the whole unanticipated funds, and if we can't get that warrant article passed this time. I know I heard you guys talking about the focus group money and putting that in for next year. If we think we're gonna get some for next year, is there anything else that we should be putting in for grants so that it can be anticipated? Or does that work against us?
You can only anticipate revenue that you know you're going to get. So if the title grants are not competitive, they are given to you. So we can anticipate, but we can't fully anticipate them because we don't know how much we're gonna get, so we have to actually cut them short. Because if we anticipate too much, then we have to take from someplace else. That's money that would be spent in the